Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. I am Captain Zelnick, and today we are going to be going into a little piece of internal mechanics of the actual rule set of Battlefleet Gothic that led to an interesting situation that I feel that the community at large should actually know about to have some idea about what happens when we find serious problems in Battlefleet Gothic. Just to be clear, Battlefleet Gothic as a rule set is a reasonably old rule set. It's been around for quite some time. It was created by GW. There have been two books, the aforementioned blue and orange book, or the core rule book, and the Armada expansion. And then, of course, there was the 2010 FAQ and a number of smaller FAQs that came out that addressed small issues. Now, after those FAQs, there haven't been any real major edits or changes to the rule set, with the exception of a serious rule change that happened recently that was an omission and a mistake made a very long time ago that had to be corrected very recently. So it's relevant, and I'll explain in a bit. But as I have taken in my illustrious amounts of spare time, I suppose, taken it my responsibility, along with Griftifer, who can be found in the Discord servers, to actually compile, edit, and get the fleet book into a position where it can actually be referenced and used for all fleets in the game accurately. It's inevitable, as more eyes are put onto a document, that some things will come up that may be a problem. So, to give you the proper preface of this a wonderful little adventure, I was speaking with Mittens, who you've seen me play several times on the channel. Mittens happens to be the head of the Battlefleet Gothic tournament at Adepticon. So if you are going to Adepticon, I'll see you guys there. We've got a lot of cool stuff planned. There'll be another video about updates on that very soon, I promise. But we were talking about building chaos lists, and a question emerged because I thought a rule set was a certain way, and he said the other, and I went and had a look, and it specifically involved the battle barges of the Chaos Legions, the big four, right? Emperor's Children, Thousand Sons, World Eaters, and the Death Guard. Right? So we're talking about the Scion of Prospero, the Terminus Est, the Wage of Sin, and the artist formerly known as Conqueror. And we were talking about, wait a minute, they have they're all supposed to have Space Marines on them, right? And turns out, no, the Scion of Prospero and the Terminus Est don't have Space Marines on them. And I had to sit there and go, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense now, does it? I mean, these are the Legion flagships, or at least they were the Legion flagships before the Gloriana ships started emerging. Why wouldn't they all have Space Marines as standard? They're already witheringly expensive, too. I mean, the Scion of Prospero, or Prosper, however you pronounce it, is 450 points. It's only 100 points cheaper than the Planet Killer. It is a ridiculously pricey vessel. Why wouldn't it have Space Marines? And the problems just kind of compounded, because if it were just, say, the artist formerly known as the Conqueror that had Space Marines, I could go, okay, you know what, maybe that makes sense. It is World Bearers, it is Khorne Berserkers, it would make sense, but for some reason, the Wages of Sin has them. So that creates something of a precedent, right? It creates a precedent, and as a result, why don't these other Legion flagships have Space Marines? So I decided to do that thing that I do, which is I grab the biggest spoon that I can and go to the place where I can actually communicate with the High Lords. Now, I give endless credit to Horizon for being willing to deal with my obsession on the matter, and he is the one who communicates directly with the High Lords, and he was actually able to also communicate with the creator of the original Terminus Est and Death Guard rules. And we got some really interesting feedback about that from them. And here we go. Up above, in the top statement, is the response from the original creator of the rules, a guy by the name of Matt. And Matt says, in terms of general rationale, traditionally we tended to think of the number of Chaos Space Marines aboard any given ship as relatively small in comparison to the thousands of souls needed to crew it overall. And that those would often be the first forces committing to fighting planetside or boarding actions launched from other ships in the fleet. So even a prominent vessel like Terminus Est might not have that many Chaos Space Marines, depending on the situation. And below, where a lot of the problems emerge, comes from the High Lords. The Emperor's Children or World Eaters didn't get official support. If we made the rules call, I don't remember it. I'm with Matt for the rationale. Chaos Space Marines should just be an upgrade. The Planet Killer or Black Legion flagship doesn't have Chaos Space Marines. Which is it's a good call. It's a call. I'll put it like that. Because when it comes to the lore revolving around that statement, I don't know if that's actually accurate. Because if we're going to... Let's view this from a lore perspective first, okay? We are talking about the Scion of Prospero, the artist formerly known as the Conqueror, the Wage of Sin, and the Terminus Est. These are flagships. The Terminus Est is the personal battle barge of Typhus. These vessels are valuable, endlessly valuable to their legions. And these are legion battle barges. These are not just battleships, these are battle barges. And I cannot stress that enough. These are not like a Desolator or a Despoiler. These are far closer to a Space Marine battle barge, which, well, yes, will have thousands upon thousands of serfs running the ship, but they still get the Space Marine special rule. These are not just a battleship that's run by cultists, okay? These are very important vessels. And the idea that the Space Marine, the Chaos Space Marines, would just be consigned to boarding or ground action is a little bit of a leap of logic. Which is why I decided to go and ask for some consistency in this particular scenario, because it's inconsistent dramatically with lore. It just is not a rationale that I think is even reasonable. Now, getting into the rules areas of it, things get a little more complex, because for the ships that have those Space Marine crews, it appears, though not necessarily so, that the points for those Space Marines are, while at a discount, baked into their point costs. But at the same time, if we are looking at the Scion of Prospero, hold on, allow me to bring that up. Here we go. Let me vanish these images. This is a 450 point battleship. Okay? Now, if we're going to compare this to the most closest relevant vessel, which would be a Despoiler, which sits at 400 points, what are you getting for those extra 50 points here? Well, you're getting an improved weapons battery, but at weaker range. Instead of strength 6 at 60, it's strength 9 at 45. You're getting +1 lance, but again, you have weaker range. You have +1 launch capacity, which is a nice little addition, and you have a very weak prow torpedo. You're actually reduced in strength. So if I were to be the one to make a sort of call on the points value here, just on the basis of the weapons, not necessarily on these upgrades down here, this is too much of a points increase for what little you're getting, because strength 6 at 60 is equivalent roughly to 9 at 45. Now, the lance battery improvement, 3 at 60 versus 4 at 45, it's roughly equivalent. It may constitute maybe like a 5 or 10 point points increase. The increase of launch capacity is maybe a 5 or 10 point, but then you have a launch capacity of the torpedo drop pretty dramatically. Now, at the same time, you're not getting that big prow lance option, but you're kind of trading off the strength of that. Because remember, on the normal Despoiler, it has a strength 5 lance at 30 centimeters that can be swapped out for a torpedo. But this is weaker. Instead of strength 8, it's only strength 6. So it looks like 2 of that strength got swapped into the launch bays. So maybe we could see a 10, maybe even a 15-point increase just because of the lance, but I wouldn't even go that far. I would say that this is actually pretty on par with an upgraded despoiler. Now, if we're going to go down and look at the individual abilities that supposedly make this thing 450 points, we have Vagaries of Fate, which any ship within 15 centimeter vessel, friend or foe, now that's very important, must place a blast marker in contact with it. This is, because it's friend or foe, is points neutral. This is not friendly to anybody. This actually probably hurts the vessel more than helps. Now, over here, Vagaries of Fate is gifted with an additional reroll added to the Mark of Tzeentch. So you get 1 plus the Mark of Tzeentch, but the demons bound to the hull are easily enraged if you fail. So if you fail as a reroll for any reason, you take a damage. So this very much, again, balances itself out. There's no real points net positive or negative. So where do all of those extra points come from? That's a good question, right? Where do we're talking maybe 400 points plus what? Well, it comes with the Mark of Tzeentch, so okay, 425. Where do the other 25 points come from? Where are they supposed to be attributed to? Because you're not getting that much for that 50 points. Okay, yeah, we've swapped around torpedoes and we've swapped around range and strength of the weapons battery, but without Space Marines on this ship, is it really worth it? So that's something that we should be considering. Now, we can go down to the other ship that is supposedly doesn't have Space Marines, but maybe should have, is this Terminus Est. Now, all you Nurgle fans are going to be happy that I'm showing the Terminus Est at 430 points, so it's cheaper than the Scion. What are we looking at? Well, obviously, it's a 13-hit battleship because it has the Mark of Nurgle, so we're going to be basing it again on the Despoiler. Now, what are we looking at? Well, we have significantly inferior weapon strength. So here we are looking at a 230 centimeter weapons batteries left and right. They're Hives of Nurgle. They effectively count as batteries. We can go into details there in a moment, but they are very short range. You have the shorter equivalent range, 45 for 4 Lance. You have the launch capacity 3, and you have those Prow Lance batteries, which by the way are standard on the Despoiler, but these are front, left, right. So there is going to be a points increase for that. So bear that in mind. Now, let's look at their special rules. We have the Miasma of Pestilence. Place the ship's turrets, work in the exact same way, but has no effect against torpedoes. So right there, points reduction. Okay? You can shoot torpedoes at this all day, every day. All right? But it does provide no column shift within 15 centimeters. So we have a major weakness and a significant, and I would call it an acceptable, but not points even weak strength. It's nice that with you're within 15 centimeters, you don't benefit from a left column shift when firing. But to be brutally honest, I would be shooting torpedoes at this all day, every day. Excuse me. So let's bear that in mind. It's not necessarily... This ship is actually pretty significantly points discounted, or at least should be, from a standard despoiler. The major points additives would be the front, left, right option on these lances, though they are still stuck at 30 centimeters. A slight increase to the Prow launch bay, but if you hadn't noticed, this isn't strength 5 anymore, or is it? Let's see, the despoiler's in here. Let me just quickly double check the standard despoiler, because I can't remember if it has a standard lance battery. I think it may be 4. Might as well double check. It may just be 4. Yeah, it's just 4 on the despoiler. So it is flush, but it's front, left, right. That is a points plus, points positive. But every other element of this ship is points negative. Weaker range on the weapons batteries. By half. And that's a huge points reduction. We are massively reducing the strength of those weapons batteries. We have a dorsal lance battery that is flush with a strength 3 at 60, which is normal. So 4 at 45, 3 at 60, roughly equivalent. We have a slight increase to the launch capacity of the ship. They are moved to the prow, which is like a 5-point, realistically only like a 5-point upgrade, maybe 10 points if you're being really mean to them. Ultimately, though, because this thing is so vulnerable to torpedoes, it's not worth 430 points. If I were to point this thing out, it would be like 385. So where's this additional points coming from? Yeah, it has maybe the mark of Nurgle, fine, but even that doesn't kind of bring it up to where 430 points really lay. Okay, yeah, I have 13 hits, hooray! It's just one more hit of torpedoes before the ship gets wrecked. So I'm asking the question here, where are these extra points going? What are they doing? Now, quick, Hive of Nurgle, I missed this. Maybe there's something special here. Exactly the same way as weapon batteries, but you place a single blast marker anywhere along the course of movement. So this is flush. It doesn't really do anything except add blast markers to the table. There's really nothing that special about the Hives of Nurgle rule. So that's a problem. There are points values that there are points that are not very well represented for the ship. And it appears that these were originally either designed to have something like Space Marines, or the way because of the nature of those ships, the Wages of Sin, which we have right here, and the Conqueror, the artist formerly known as the Conqueror, are not supposed to have them. So let's look at the Wages of Sin. So I've made a video on the Wage of Sin. It's my favorite of the ships. It's basically a desolator that's had a stick slapped on it. Sorry, I have a sudden cough. Get a little bit of water in me. So we have a desolator with the sticks. We have a port and starboard lance battery at strength 4, but they are reduced in range to 45. We have the dorsal weapons battery at strength 6 at 60. That hasn't been changed. Launch capacity 6 and 9 torpedoes. It has Chaos Space Marines, and it has it just has Noise Marines. That's the only real power. Now, I would say that this thing is powerful enough as it is, but a desolator battleship is 300 points. Okay? This vessel, the only additive, really, is the launch capacity. Now, this is going to be a lot of points. Don't get me wrong. But it's not 130 points, especially since we've reduced the range of the lances. So you need those Space Marines really to bring it up to 430 points. So there's points inconsistencies going on, at least in my opinion, with this ship. But I think potentially this thing's actually overpriced. But anyway, regardless of the issues regarding these vessels, this inconsistency was brought forward, and it became a rather important question. The High Lords never approved Space Marines on those ships. And their intention, as stated by the High Lords, was to not have them be standard because they wanted the player to have the option of not having them on there. Well, this creates a very serious problem because in the domain of the rules of BFG, the only authority that has the right to say what is allowed in the rules and what is not are the High Lords. No one else has the authority to say this goes in. If Nate, who, bless his heart and hide, I'm not blaming him for telling, I'm not saying he's a bad person for missing this, because it looks like it was. There's a lot of rules that you had to go through in the 2010 FAQ. It may have been omitted. It happens. That's okay. But the problem is, because it didn't get a thumbs up from him, these ships, by the rules that we have established in our community, are not official. because we don't have High Lord approval on them. These are fan-made ships that have been given, ultimately, High Lord approval to be made official. If they don't have that, these things aren't actually approved. This means only the Terminus Est, is actually the only approved fleet. All of the other, the Wage of Sin, all of their fleets, the Conqueror, the artist formerly known as the Conqueror, sorry, the Sign of Prospero, none of these things have been approved. So I asked if we could get High Lord approval for these ships, if we could just get them to look at them and give us an official thumbs up. Problem solved, right? Unfortunately, we ran into another problem, which is inconsistency with some of the leaders of the community. The argument is the remastered project does not have the scope to change the rules, and this is a lie. This is not true at all. We have had to change the rules when we ran into problems before. So I need to impress this upon you. I disagree with Horizon on this notion. Remastered is not just a reconciliation of all the rule set. We've had to fix things. We've not had a choice, because if we want to get all of the rules into it, we're running into situations where barely looked over rules that have not been looked at for maybe a decade we're finding errors, and we have to fix them, because otherwise the integrity of our rule set comes into question. The argument of no, we're just going to let it stay the status quo, it's not a good argument. It's actually a very bad argument, especially when you can just send an email and say, hey, look at these two ships. Give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If it's thumbs down, we'll fix them. It takes us all of an afternoon. If it's okay with you, thumbs up, awesome. We go on as status quo. But we didn't do that. Instead, we have people that are insisting and saying, just leave it as it is. It's outside of the scope. This is the biggest problem with the BFG community as it is. Right now, the leaders of the BFG community, in some cases, are too adherent to the status quo. When we have problems that are about 10 years old, we discover them, we should be fixing them. We have access to the High Lords. If they're unwilling to do their jobs as High Lords, no offense, gentlemen, you should appoint new High Lords that are. Regardless, this is a problem. This is a very serious problem. Now, if everyone is insisting that the remastered project is outside of the scope, does not have the scope to fix problems that we find, we've already crossed that Rubicon with the Grey Knights. The Grey Knights fleet was impossible to play, and we fixed it. It took us a couple of months. It didn't even really need that long. We should be doing the same for this if we discover there is an omission in the 2010 process. Because here's the problem if we leave status quo. And this is actually a very serious problem. It is an understanding in our community that the High Lords have the final say. If we, not the High Lords, make a decree stating that we will not change anything, despite the fact that we have an omission of the High Lords and two ships are now potentially in question as to their validity, we are potentially overruling the High Lords. We are establishing authority over their will, which means the High Lord's position becomes meaningless, which is not something that I'm really happy about. I would rather spend the time, get the work done, and reestablish and maintain the established rules of our community and our rule set. To disregard the High Lords is a bad idea, unless they decide that we need new High Lords. Maybe we do. That's a different conversation that may need to have happen, because unfortunately we only really get word from two of them. The third one just doesn't really talk to us at all. So what does this mean for Battlefleet Gothic as a whole right now? Well, nothing's changing. That we have established that we're not going to be changing it in the remastered project, and while I don't like it, I can accept it, because honestly, it's been 10 years. But we are dangerously close to ruining an element of our culture that is actually very important, which is the establishment authority of the High Lords and their word. They're human, they make mistakes, but when we find their mistakes, they should fix them. And it's not hard. Take a peek at the ships. If the answer is, yeah, these should have Space Marines as an option as opposed to Space Marines as standard, fine, we readjust the points down 35 points. It's not going to hurt these ships very much. Maybe some of the other ships have to be adjusted slightly too. Whatever. That's life. We have to do this. If we're going to try and be good custodians of the rules, we have to pay attention to when we make mistakes. If the answer is leave it as is, also fine, but at least we have the seal of approval of the High Lords, which we don't have. So right now, these ships are kind of floating in limbo, and that's not a good thing for the game. This really does need to be fixed. Now, if you have a different opinion on the matter and think that I'm just bloviating about this, comment down below. If you agree with me, comment down below. The good news is the people who talk about this topic and who have a lot of authority watch this channel. Let them have their say. I'm always willing to listen to their opinion, though I'll be honest, I find this to be the start of a very negative trend, which is when we find problems, we're not solving them. And we really should be. This isn't even a fan project thing. This is we found a problem with our FAQ made in 2010. We need to correct it immediately. We've done FAQs in the past. We've done corrections to fleets recently. There's nothing stopping us, and there's no good reason not to get it resolved now when all you need to do is send an email. It's that simple. So forgive my little rant, but okay. For those of you who are running tournaments or running campaigns, status quo is the rule for now. But really it is important that we make it abundantly clear things like this need to be resolved. Okay? We can't just sit here and be lazy about it. We need the resolution. All right. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all again in the next video. Have a good one. Bye-bye.